At the start of 2026, the global K-pop industry finds itself once again reflecting on how performance has evolved over the past decade. Discussions no longer focus solely on vocals, visuals, or choreography as separate elements. Instead, performance is increasingly understood as a complete artistic language, one that blends emotion, movement, presence, and storytelling. Within these conversations, one name continues to surface with notable consistency: Jimin. As 2026 begins, music critics, choreographers, and performance analysts increasingly point to Jimin as an artist whose distinctive style has left a lasting imprint on how K-pop performances are created and interpreted. His influence is not defined by trends he follows, but by an artistic identity that has quietly shaped the standards of performance itself. Jimin's artistic style has always resisted simple categorization. From the early years of BTS, he was recognized not merely as a dancer or vocalist, but as a performer capable of translating emotion into movement. His performances emphasized nuance, subtle shifts in expression, controlled intensity, and an almost narrative quality that made each stage feel personal. By 2026, this identity has become a reference point. Industry professionals often describe Jimin's style as emotionally driven rather than technically dominant. While his technical skill is unquestioned, what distinguishes him is the way technique disappears into expression. This approach has influenced how performance is evaluated across K-pop, shifting focus from precision alone to emotional delivery. One of the most cited aspects of Jimin's influence is emotional expressiveness. In an industry known for synchronized choreography and visual spectacle, Jimin demonstrated that emotional clarity could elevate performance impact. His ability to convey vulnerability, tension, and release through movement has been widely discussed by critics and educators alike. At the start of 2026, this emphasis on emotional performance is increasingly visible among newer K-pop acts. Choreography now frequently incorporates moments designed for expressive interpretation rather than constant intensity. Observers trace this shift back, in part, to performers like Jimin, who proved that emotional storytelling resonates deeply with global audiences. Another significant dimension of Jimin's influence lies in how he redefined masculine expression on stage. His performances challenged rigid notions of strength by embracing softness, fluidity, and vulnerability without diminishing power. This balance expanded the emotional vocabulary available to male performers in K-pop. By early 2026, analysts note that a wider range of expressions is now visible across the industry. Performers feel less confined to traditional performance archetypes and more encouraged to explore contrast and emotional depth. Jimin's style helped open the space, not through statement, but through consistency. Jimin's background in contemporary dance has long been cited as a foundational element of his performance style. Rather than treating choreography as a series of isolated moves, he approaches it as a continuous narrative. Transitions matter, breathing matters, stillness matters. This philosophy has influenced how choreographers structure performances. Increasingly, stages are designed with emotional arcs rather than purely visual impact. As of 2026, performance directors frequently reference Jimin's stages when discussing how to balance technical choreography with storytelling flow. Jimin's influence is not confined to Korea. International audiences often cite his performances as emotionally accessible, even without understanding lyrics. This cross-cultural resonance has become a benchmark for global K-pop performance success. At the start of 2026, this quality remains central to discussions about expanding K-pop's global reach. Performers who can communicate emotion universally are seen as key to sustaining international growth. Jimin's work continues to serve as an example of how performance can transcend language. By 2026, Jimin's influence can be felt not only on stage, but also behind the scenes, particularly in how performance training is conceptualized. Dance instructors and performance coaches increasingly emphasize emotional interpretation alongside technique. Training sessions now dedicate time to facial expression, breath control, and internal rhythm, elements that Jimin has consistently embodied throughout his career. Rather than training performers to execute choreography flawlessly, many academies now aim to develop performers who can communicate through movement. This shift reflects a broader understanding that performance is not just seen, it is felt. Jimin's stages are frequently referenced in discussions about how emotion and discipline can coexist within structured choreography. Choreographers working in the K-pop industry often describe Jimin as a performer who elevates choreography through interpretation. His ability to add layers of meaning to movement has influenced how choreographers design routines. Instead of relying solely on complexity or speed, many now prioritize moments of restraint, contrast, and emotional release. Creative directors also note that Jimin's presence encourages holistic stage planning. Lighting, camera angles, and pacing are increasingly aligned to support emotional arcs, an approach that mirrors how Jimin naturally commands attention without excess movement. This influence has quietly reshaped the creative process behind modern K-pop performances. Media analysis at the start of 2026 frequently highlights Jimin's stage presence as a defining characteristic of his influence. Critics describe his presence as immersive rather than dominant. He draws audiences in not through force, but through emotional sincerity. His movements often feel intentional, measured, and deeply connected to the music. This quality has become a benchmark for performance reviews. Rather than asking whether a stage was powerful, critics increasingly ask whether it was felt. Jimin's performances helped redefine these criteria. Jimin's solo stages further solidified his influence as an independent artistic voice. These performances allowed him to explore vulnerability, introspection, and subtle emotional shifts without the structural support of group choreography. The result was a deeper exploration of performance as personal expression. By 2026, these solo stages are often cited as case studies in how individuality can coexist with technical excellence. They demonstrated that a performer does not need excess spectacle to create impact. Clarity of emotion is enough. Despite his strong individual identity, Jimin's influence is also rooted in his ability to integrate seamlessly within group performances. Within BTS, he has consistently adapted his expression to support collective storytelling. This balance between individuality and unity is now studied as a model for group dynamics in K-pop. Performance analysts point out that Jimin never overpowers the group. Instead, his presence enhances cohesion by adding emotional texture where needed. This approach has influenced how newer groups think about internal balance and role distribution. Audience response to Jimin's performances often centers on emotional connection rather than technical admiration alone. Fans and casual viewers alike describe feeling drawn in or moved by his stages. This reaction transcends fandom and language barriers. At the start of 2026, this emotional resonance is increasingly recognized as a key metric of performance success. Artists who can evoke feeling are valued alongside those who demonstrate precision. Jimin's legacy in this area continues to shape expectations. Performance longevity is rarely discussed, yet Jimin's career offers a compelling example. His style has evolved without losing its core identity. Rather than reinventing himself with each era, he has refined his approach, allowing depth to replace novelty. This longevity challenges the notion that performance trends must constantly shift to remain relevant. Jimin demonstrates that consistency, when rooted in authenticity, can sustain influence across years. By 2026, this perspective is increasingly respected within the industry. Jimin's performances blur the lines between music, dance, and emotional storytelling. He treats songs as emotional landscapes rather than fixed structures. Movement becomes an extension of sound, and silence becomes as expressive as motion. This integrated approach has influenced how performances are conceptualized, encouraging artists to think beyond choreography and toward holistic expression. As a result, performances feel less mechanical and more human. International critics often cite Jimin as an example of how K-pop performance appeals to global audiences. His expressiveness requires no translation. Emotion becomes the shared language. By early 2026, this universality is considered essential to sustaining K-pop's global presence. Performers who can communicate without reliance on lyrics or cultural familiarity are seen as key ambassadors. Jimin's influence in this area continues to be acknowledged across borders. In an industry driven by spectacle and constant visibility, Jimin's influence is notably quiet. He does not dominate headlines through controversy or overexposure. Instead, his work circulates organically through discussion, reference, and imitation. This quiet influence is often the most enduring. It allows his performances to age gracefully, maintaining relevance without saturation. As new generations of performers enter the industry, Jimin increasingly serves as a reference point, not as a template to copy, but as a standard to understand. His work is studied for its balance, restraint, and emotional clarity. Mentions of Jimin in training environments reflect respect rather than imitation, a sign of lasting influence. Central to Jimin's influence is authenticity. His performances feel personal rather than performative. This integrity resonates with audiences seeking connection in an increasingly polished industry. By 2026, authenticity has become a defining value in performance discussions, and Jimin stands as one of its strongest examples. Looking ahead, analysts suggest that Jimin's influence will continue to shape how performance evolves. Future trends may emphasize emotional honesty, narrative flow, and restraint, qualities he has consistently embodied. Rather than pushing boundaries through excess, the future of performance may lean toward depth. Jimin's impact cannot be measured solely by awards or chart positions. His legacy lies in how performance feels different because of him, how expectations have shifted, how artists approach the stage with greater intention. This legacy is subtle but profound. As 2026 begins, Jimin's artistic style continues to influence K-pop performance trends, not through force, but through example. He reminds the industry that performance is not about being seen, it is about being felt. In a world of constant noise, his influence speaks quietly and lasts.